Marissa, good morning. How are you? So great to have you on.
Good to be here. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm outstanding, outstanding. This is a topic that is near and dear to me because I am the most guilty of all the people out there when it comes to nutrition. I like brownies. I like hamburgers are my favorite food. Um, and so I realize that I am past my prime when it comes to performance on the field, although there are a lot of parents out there, myself included, who have children who are looking to perform at a high level. Nutrition probably is a struggle for all of us. And so my hope is that through this conversation, we can help educate folks, give them some ideas, some tips, and how to best help their children perform, due to proper nutrition and probably some sleep. That's
Absolutely.
the goal for today. Awesome. So to, really dive in, right? You are, and Jimbo, your husband, who is your partner in life as well as Pernetti Sports Performance, he calls you the better half, right? He says that everyone goes to him to get to you because you are, you have a degree in dietetics and you operate all the nutritional aspects of the business. Um, Grew up in California. Are you also a Central California native as well?
Yep, I grew up between Sacramento and South Lake Tahoe.
Okay, awesome. We're talking about how different that is from a San Francisco Californian and a Los Angelian Californian. You get a pass because you moved to Texas, but you're not one of those Californians.
Yes, yes, we're not one of those. Been here 4 years.
Mhm.
No, we love it here.
Awesome. So you went to Chico State, right, as well, and
Yes.
got a degree in dietetics. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That is correct.
Dietetics?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great. It reminds me of there was like back in the 80s or 90s, I feel like it was like diastetics or something like that commercial that we would see on TV. And so I wasn't quite sure. Dietetics.
That
Can you
is correct.
describe exactly what you study in dietetics?
Yeah, so it's essentially nutrition. Um, when it comes to the options through school, I went to school for nutrition and then I decided to go the dietetics route, just takes things one step further and it dives a little deeper into medical nutrition therapy. So really learning the depth of the science of how to cure people and help people with nutrition in a medical setting. So during my time in Chico, I did work in a hospital, but very quickly realized that my passion lied outside of that because I was seeing so many people who were already sick, were already hurting, were there for a surgery. They had no desire to learn anything, no desire to change anything. And I'm coming in and essentially, taking salt off of their tray and then their family sneaking in McDonald's.
Right.
And so for me, I want to get out in front and help people before they get to that point so they can
Right.
build a healthy relationship with food and a way that's not quite as overwhelming and
Yeah.
overcomplicated as it's often made to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That's a very interesting experience from, being in the hospital. In doing some prep for our conversation, I was just curious about general health of the American society and ended up looking at some data from the CDC. And I'm not here to say, how they get the data or is the data accurate or whatever. I think we can all go to Walmart, we could judge for ourselves. But what the data showed is that the prevalence of obesity amongst adults in the US, and that is classified as people over 20, was 41.9% of adults. And that is between 2017 and 2020 is when that data came out. That was pretty surprising. I knew it was probably high, but that is literally two out of every five adults in America are considered obese. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, like bone density and all this other body type. I get it, but it's still a high number. But was pretty yeah, there's probably we will all agree there's the borderline, and then there's are clearly those that are having some issue. Is nearly 10%, so 9.2% of US adults were severely obese. And that's a huge number. That's over 22 million people.
Yeah,
Um, and to your experience getting in the hospital, and you're seeing these people as they're coming in dealing with like diabetes, heart disease, and things of that nature. And the desire is not to just treat them once they're there, but how do you get out in front of it so that they're never there in the first place?
exactly. Yes,
Mhm.
you hit the nail on the head. So my two specialties that I've really fallen in love with, I work both with young athletes, so kind of teaching them the foundation of what nutrition is. We'll kind of dive a little bit more into it as we go along here in this
Sure.
conversation, but really building them up so they understand their body, they understand how to fuel not only their growing human self, but also the additional needs that come with being an athlete. And then on the other side, I also work in weight loss because I know that number is so high. And I'm honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it's gotten higher since that data
Sure.
has come out. And it's so disheartening because we have one body our entire life. And we're taught so many things in school, so many things that we don't ever use, whether it's, geometry, learning about some animal out there, but not learning about ourselves. And so I'm really passionate about both fronts because at the end of the day, you have one body and
Mhm.
it's going to impact the way you live, whether you're healthy or whether you're not.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I love that the idea is start early with kids, in particular athletes. Because with the athlete, there's that desired outcome, and you can almost use that to your advantage to say, look, if you want to make it to the NBA or NFL or to the big leagues, you got to eat your vegetables, right? You can kind of dangle that carrot
mhm,
out.
mhm,
And it's super important because on the same site on the CDC, I was looking at some data for kids, and one in every five kids are on that obesity, area. So not that um, they not just I'm not here to judge anyone. There's a lot of reasons for that. Education, I think, is a big one. So that is part of what I hope to do today, just educate people and give them ideas. There's like socioeconomic, there's all kind of reasons for that, but the first step is just admitting, okay, we got an issue here. Let's get the information out there and do the best that we can to help people learn and to get healthy.
absolutely.
Awesome. And so you're in dietetics, you're working with kids now. Um, just diving into like Pernetti, when Jimbo approached you about joining on and running these programs for kids and for athletes, what were your initial thoughts? Was this something that was right in line with your passion and what you wanted to do, or what did he have to twist your arm and convince you a little bit?
I was immediately on board.
Awesome.
Um, so James, he had actually, or Jimbo, he goes by Jimbo,
Yeah.
in the sport world, but he had actually moved out to Texas about 6 months prior to me while I was still finishing up my degree. And he was out here by himself and he had a lot of downtime. He was working with another company where he was working with athletes, and he just kept thinking to himself, because at the time, I don't know if he went into it at all, but he was working with a lot of professional athletes and parents who had hundreds and hundreds of dollars to throw out each and every week for their kid to be trained for 2 hours
Mhm.
and maybe get a little bit of nutrition knowledge. And he reached out to me with the idea, and I loved it right away because I think working with kids has always been my passion. And going back a little bit into my past, my relationship with food is what kind of put me off course from sports because I used to play softball and tennis. And in high school, I was under fueling, which led to iron deficiency anemia,
Mhm.
which is essentially you're not getting enough oxygen. It was a very easy fix, could have been a supplement, but I didn't know anything about it. So my performance suffered. And with that, I had this growing curiosity of the science of it, the human body.
Hmm.
And that's actually something we bonded over when we first met back in Chico, was that information, or just athletics in general.
Right.
So he brought that up. I was like, okay, let's go. But um, I guess for me, I'm not very good at putting my face out there. So that was maybe the one hesitancy. I work predominantly kind of behind the scenes at the moment. So
Hmm.
getting to work with athletes, but letting him do all the outreach has worked well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And that your story reminds me, I can't remember, there's a pitcher. He's in the big leagues right now. I don't remember the team, but I remember the story. And the story goes something like this. He was in school and they do drug tests and he failed his urinalysis. He failed his drug test, but not because of drugs, because they found something in his urinalysis that indicated he had diabetes. And to that point, he couldn't gain weight because he had this undiagnosed diabetic issue.
Mhm.
But once they discovered this, he was able to get help, get the proper treatment, and things of that nature. Fast forward, not only is he seeing success, but he is throwing like 100 miles an hour now in the big leagues and is one of the best pitchers in the league. So that's an awesome story that you have a young man who's out there that has a dream. It could be a young woman as well, right? And by just understanding the information and just having just people around you that are willing to help, results in you being able to fulfill your dream. And so I felt that that was a very cool story.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And there's so many of them like that, you
Mhm.
know, because at the end of the day, I'd say nutrition is one of the most overlooked components of athletic success, but ultimately it's the backbone. Because
Yep.
there's that cliche saying of you are what you eat, but at the end of the day, you are what you eat. That is who you are. And
Sure.
especially for these young athletes that have so much going on in their lives and their bodies going through so many different developmental stages, not only
Yeah.
physically, but mentally, you have to fuel those things properly.
Yeah. And it's I have a 15-year-old son, and we don't have this particular conversation, but something around nutrition, I feel like weekly. We try to do things like meal prep and just quit buying certain foods, buy some of other foods, but just encourage him, surprisingly, to eat more, like eat more often because he goes to football at 6 o'clock in the morning and then he's right in class. And I'm like, dude, you got to eat. So when you're talking to parents and kids and athletes, do you have a speech or something like that that you give to help them understand and the importance that nutrition has on performance?
I mean, oftentimes it's the difference between, the kids that play in high school and then the kids that get to go beyond that.
Hmm.
If you don't build that foundation up early, when you have your parents around, you have that support, it's only going to get harder. Not always. There's some kids that are, they're motivated, they have that intrinsic desire to seek that information and improve themselves, but it doesn't come naturally to everyone. And I know on my side, being the nutritionist, I get, especially from young athletes, boys especially, they're like, oh, like I have to see a nutritionist, which they just think I'm going to say, eat your veggies, don't eat tasty
Right.
food. But that's not what it's about. We have to be realistic. These are kids. You want to eat good food. You want to be able to go out to eat. My thing is really looking at it like 80/20, and also looking at it, like you don't always want to go train, but it's a
Sure.
part of the process. If you want to go pro, that's a part of the process.
Hmm.
And same thing with fueling, having a little bit more knowledge, whether that's the pre-workout fueling, the post-workout. There's some, that core foundation that everyone needs, and then athletes have some additional needs on top of that.
And it's interesting the word you use, fueling, because it, and I don't know if this is the right way to think about it or not, but I've heard it that when you are an athlete, it is your nutrition, your intake, you're not eating because of comfort or even a lot of cases, and we'll talk about this, because you're hungry or whatever. You have to understand your body is like an engine. It's a motor that never stops burning fuel. So in order for you to achieve your goals, you have to feel that. And it helps disassociate food with the emotion a little bit, right? Because when you're bored, you tend to eat. When you're depressed, your girlfriend broke up with you, you want to eat a whole pizza and
Mm-hmm.
breadsticks and everything else, right?
Yes.
So if you can almost disassociate food with the emotion and think about it more like from a performance standpoint, I think that's a better way to think about it in life, really.
Yeah.
It can be super helpful as kids move and mature into adulthood.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, so dealing with athletes, there are two common things that I hear. The first thing is you have in baseball specifically, I think it's more prevalent than other sports, is colleges are looking for kids that are big and strong. We went to some camps this year, college camps, and within the first 5 minutes, the head coach of the college tells the boys, if you're not in the weight room, if you're not getting big, then don't even think about it. Like we don't even look at kids who are 135 pounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a lot of kids that can't gain weight, and then you have those that maybe are looking to shed some weight, is one or the other. So let's first start with the gaining weight because I feel like in baseball, you have a lot of very lean athletes that are almost afraid to put on weight in fear of degradation in their performance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or you have kids that you hear parents say, "Man, he just can't gain weight. He's just so skinny. He's growing, and so he
Mm-hmm.
can't gain weight."
Yep.
Um, how do you I guess just dive me into that. How do you approach that scenario? What is, from a strategy standpoint, what would you say to a kid or to a parent about just being able to put on weight during those growing years, right? You're 14 through 16, 17 years old.
Mm-hmm. So common. We hear this all the time. And we always hear from athletes, I'm always eating, or I'm eating so much. And what we do with those athletes is we really, we break it down. Well, what is so much? Because to them, they're thinking they're eating all of this food, but then when we take a look at what they're actually consuming, it's not much, or it's low quality things, or it's very sporadic. There's not a fueling plan.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing we do is kind of take a look at that, see what they're consuming at that moment, and then we make a game plan in terms of, okay, what is your goal? Are you trying to put on muscle mass? Are you trying to lose weight? For the sake of starting with putting on the muscle mass, we look at that and then we make a game plan around that that's going to feel realistic. So my approach is, not to overhaul everything because
Mm-hmm.
that's overwhelming and it doesn't work. So picking one or two things that we can adjust, whether it's sneaking in an extra protein shake or whether it's adding some extra, more calorically dense items to the meals they're already eating, like
Mm-hmm.
whether it's some nuts or seeds on top of something,
Mm-hmm.
adding a little bit of nut butter, making some shakes. So really just doing it so we're not maybe necessarily adding more volume so they don't feel uncomfortable, but we're making a plan. We're having you eat pretty consistently throughout the day. Consistency is really the
Mm-hmm.
name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then just educating them on the why, and combining that with proper training, they're going to get the outcome that they're desiring, and it gets very motivating and easier to go along as you start to see that improvement.
Right. And just for the sake of the conversation, right? What athletes are looking to do. You're looking to pull lean muscle in baseball is what you're looking to do. And so what you're going to the ask to put on weight, not only are calorically are you going to have to increase the calories, your intake, but
Mhm.
then you're also increasing your training probably as well. So that
Mhm.
would almost necessitate you're going to have to eat more than you really think you need to, and it might get
Mhm.
uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Do you find that to be the case as well?
not too often.
Okay.
And I think it comes down to, we're like I said, we're not overhauling it. And usually it's just focusing on a surplus of maybe like 200, 300 calories per day. So not something that's gonna, take you from if you're a kid having, 1,600 calories, and we're not trying to get you to bump up to 3,000, but taking gradual changes and adjustments so that way your gut can adapt because your gut, just
Oh
like
yeah, that's a good
muscles in
point.
your body, it gets used to it.
Right.
Sometimes I've even had athletes that once they start to eat more, and this isn't even without changing their training, they get hungrier because their body is starting to send those signals that they've disassociated from, whether it's because they're in school and they're told you can't eat at this time, or food isn't available, or they just didn't think about it before.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. You, probably the frequency your body is like, hey, it's time for my snack
Yeah,
or
it
whatever.
adapts.
Feed me.
Mhm. Yes,
Um,
exactly.
this brings up another question because you're trying to do gradual changes, right? And we mentioned uh, throwing in an extra protein shake or something like that. Supplements is a topic that some parents, wanted me to ask you specifically about. Like, should athletes be taking some type of supplement? And there were two specifically. So
Mhm.
I had a parent, Amanda, that asked creatine. Uh, what are your thoughts around kids taking creatine?
Yeah, so that's one of the most commonly asked questions. It is the most well-researched supplement out there,
Hmm.
in all walks of life. It essentially is the first energy system our body uses for explosive activities. So, whether that's sprinting, whether that's, lifting weights, that creatine, and specifically creatine monohydrate, is usually what I recommend for who's interested in it. Um, it just helps you get in maybe one or two additional reps. It maybe helps with the recovery in between sets a little bit more. So that can improve your training and your ability to put on some muscle. But at the end of the day, creatine is also found in food naturally.
Hmm.
So when it comes to any sort of supplement, my main thing is to educate you on, whatever that thing is that you're interested in or what you're trying to achieve with your goal. First, see if we can get that in with whole foods and with natural nutrition. And then if there's some fueling gaps, that's when we can be smart. I can make suggestions. My main thing is, always talk to your doctor. They
Right.
know what's going on internally, but I can, make some recommendations or walk through what maybe the pros and cons of different things would be.
Man, that's a great approach. Just food first. It seems to be the way to go. Um,
Yes.
and the other thing, probably all athletes, but I have a son and is, you're trying to get ripped for whatever, right? So protein. I mean, and these are things I use my son as the example, but I myself, as a former professional baseball player, I remember benches of guys eating everything in sight, but then also pounding protein and creatine. We
Yep.
weren't mixing it up, and I mean, it was just straight powder. It got to the point where we didn't even care. It's just like we.
Oh, Lord.
So I had a friend of mine, Jennifer, asked a question about protein, and specifically protein shakes and
Mhm.
additional sources of protein.
Yeah.
And that'll be a good subject because there's a lot of sources of protein that it's not just eat a bunch of meat,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Necessarily. So, what are your thoughts on like protein shakes or powders? And is it the same as creatine? Let's first look at the diet and then look see where we can add more if needed.
Um, yeah, I'd say when it comes to like protein shakes, those are much more common. I'd say the thing that you want to look out for is getting a complete protein. So one that's going to provide you with all the building blocks or amino acids that
Mhm.
your body needs and your muscles need to build, recover, all that good stuff. Um, when it comes to any sort of supplement, making sure that whatever you're looking at is third party tested because supplements are essentially an unregulated industry. So, there's a lot of people out there who unfortunately are buying things that look so great in theory, but they're just buying expensive pee, or you're essentially ending up with something that, for athletes especially, could end up with some banned substances in them.
Oh,
And
wow.
that is a very high risk. And you're ultimately, at the end of the day, responsible for what you're putting in your body.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, when I'd say like most protein is usually on the safer end, I would say. There's lots of great ones out there. Whey protein isolate is usually one of the simplest, best, easiest ways to get a complete protein. There's so many options on the market. Um, but yeah, still looking if you don't want to eat just animal protein alone, you can go at it with various other ways, whether it's Greek yogurt, whether it's eggs, whether it's fish. There's still a great foundation and a great variety of whole foods that we can look at first.
Yes.
Um, but end of day, I will say most of our athletes end up with at least a protein shake or two because of the ease and convenience with their schedules and school and
Mhm.
being able to have something portable.
Yeah. I love that approach. The reality is, I mentioned as a student athlete, you're incredibly busy, incredibly. Um, like we drop off my son for football practice at 6 o'clock in the morning. He's like, Dad, I can't eat at
Yeah.
5:30 in the morning and then go to football. He's like, I'll puke all over the place. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, you got to take something. Like
Yeah.
maybe take an apple and a protein drink or something because it's football, shower, class, rest of the day. Who knows what you're getting at lunch? And then before you know it, you've eaten virtually nothing all day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where the liquids come in. They tend to feel a little bit less filling at the
Mhm.
end of the day. So that can be beneficial for sure.
Great. Now let's look at the other end of that. You have some athletes that are, maybe they're on the heavy side.
Mhm.
And maybe there are two sport athletes that they put on weight for football, but then they need to lose it for other sports. And they're looking to shed a little bit of weight. Um, is the weight now this, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. We could spend years talking about weight loss. Is it simply a matter of cutting calories when it comes to weight loss? Like, how do you generally work with those who
Yeah.
looking to shed a few pounds?
That's a loaded question. I'd say not necessarily. At the end of the day, you do need less calories in than you are expending. Um, but the composition of the food matters. So we haven't touched on it too much, but um, I'm sure we'll go into it eventually. The macronutrients, so
Yeah.
protein, carbohydrates, fats, the building blocks of what makes us us and gives us different levels of fuel and have different functions in the body. When it comes to athletes, we can't risk impacting their energy levels, which is often what we associate with not getting enough calories. So, with those athletes, taking a similar approach to those putting on muscle, in that we're taking gradual adjustments, gradual changes as we go, focusing on maybe creating a 100 to 200 calorie deficit each day. So they're not, starving or struggling to get
Right.
through, and then being smart about how we're incorporating those macros. So with them, especially, I'd say like with carbohydrates, that's your immediate energy. We really want to focus on having that packed in before your training. So that way you can burn off that immediate energy throughout your exercise. And
Mhm.
then really incorporating good lean protein sources as a really big part of the foundation of their fueling plan. So they have everything they need for their muscles to keep strong, keep healthy, but ultimately still allow your body to burn some of that extra fat weight.
Yeah. Great. And the gradual nature of this, I'm hearing this on both sides, whether you're looking to gain weight or lose weight, is that there's no magic quick fix to this, right?
Unfortunately.
And
Yeah.
not that I feel that, well, that this needs to be said, but I'm just going to ask a question anyway. You have we turn on the TV any time. There's going to be some pill, something to help you lose weight really quickly. Would you
Yeah.
ever recommend something like that to an athlete?
No.
Okay.
I
Okay.
would not
There
personally. I
you
have not seen
go.
anything out there that, I
Right.
mean, I'd have to research what might be recommended. But at the end of the day, God gave us these bodies for a reason. He
Mhm.
gave us the access to all this food. We are so blessed in so many ways.
Yes.
So just having the knowledge of how to incorporate that properly is going to set you up not only for success with your goals in your developmental years. So the young athletes, what that goal is within their sport, but it's going to set you up for being a healthier adult. And
Yes.
that's the kicker.
Yeah, there is I saw a stat something like the diet industry has grown is like $90 billion, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a tremendous incentive to keep people unhealthy, right? And if we can just really help educate these kids now so that at some point the next generation, they're going to look at this and like, oh, this is just the way I am. I think about my intake. I think about what I eat so that I can perform. I'm healthier. I'm just a happier and better person, and then that propagates and they could teach their kids and so on and so forth and
Yes.
have a much
That
healthier
is the
country
hope.
and world. Yes, yes. So hope, obviously, right? Hope isn't necessarily a plan, and so we need to
Yeah.
make a plan, right?
Yes. That's the
um,
first piece.
that's the kicker. That's the kicker. So when you talk about having a good nutrition plan, you spoke earlier about understanding what the goals are, right? If we could just kind of go through your process for speaking with a parent or kid about their their goal setting, and just their planning, how does that typically work? Obviously, you say, "Oh, okay, Marissa, I need to put on 20 pounds, otherwise I'm not going to play college baseball." That's the goal.
Okay. Okay.
Where do
Yeah.
we go from there?
So it just starts out as a conversation. So I have like my typical athlete intake where I have specific questions I ask to get a feel for, you know, maybe that long-term goal, but also like, what's your goal for this season? What are you hoping to accomplish? What are you currently doing? And what are the first step, second step, third step? What can we start doing to get you there in a way that's going to be realistic, in a way that's going to stick?
Mhm,
Um, and it's always a matter of, especially when it comes to parents, they're the ones who are buying the food. So making sure
mhm,
that they're on board, what we plan and what we decide is going to be realistic. We're not
mhm,
adding more to their plate, or, I'm not going to hop on a call and say, okay, you need to meal prep every weekend. This is the plan. Do exactly this. Nothing like that. Doesn't work. So instead it's okay, what are you doing? What do you like doing? What can we do to make this, maybe this breakfast is an area we want to focus on first, because maybe the appetite's not really there, but we know we need to get something in because as of now, we're waiting until noon.
mhm,
So just having a conversation, trying my best to get the athlete excited about it because it's very hard. I know that at that young age, you're not thinking about fueling, and
right.
there's so little lack of focus on it in the athletic world at the moment that it's just taking those baby steps. And then once they start to see that result and they start to feel stronger, feel more energized naturally,
Mhm.
I have a lot of parents coming back and saying, like, my kid's focusing better in class. Like I can see it in their
That's so
personality.
good. That's so
That,
good.
that's
It almost
huge.
gives me
So,
goosebumps. I mean, that's real change. Not
yeah.
just not just sports. That's a life, right? That's a kid's entire life that you're influencing. So that's so good.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So
Awesome.
it's just coming up with a plan and then building upon it.
And then there's right, part of it I'm sure is reining in the plan a little bit
Yes.
or the
Yeah.
goal. Because I would say, yeah, Marissa, I want to gain 20 pounds by February. And you're like, it is October 7th.
I'd say we should have talked last year.
Right. Like, how do you, what is, I guess, reasonable? I'm not saying like how many pounds per whatever. You see all kind of things online, right? Oh, you can lose 1 pound per week, or you can gain, I'm assuming you can gain 1 pound per week.
Mhm.
But I'm sure that's probably part of the metrics and how you measure things, but I'm sure you're looking at this more long term, right, than just pounds per week. Like, what are
100%.
some of the success metrics that you talk to kids about and parents about?
Yeah, so for athletes that get on our hybrid plan where we speak with them at least once a month, we have an app that allows us to have daily questionnaires and weekly questionnaires that assess anything from their energy levels, the amount of sleep they're getting, the amount of water they're drinking. So just a quick little like 1 or 2 minute thing where they can give a rate out of like 1 to 10.
Hmm.
And that gives us a big picture of the things that I think matter. I can't say more because I know that people are very number driven and it makes sense because a lot of times a coach will tell them 20 pounds, that's what you need.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's not going to happen overnight. And how you're feeling in the interim and how you're performing and training, that's what's going to build you into a stronger athlete. That's what's going to ultimately build up your confidence too. That intrinsic confidence, that or that self-efficacy that you're putting in the work, you're getting the results, you're building up those habits that are going to serve you in the long run.
Yeah, there is I can't remember. This is I think it's Rudyard Kipling, or there's a poem that, no, it's not Rudyard Kipling. There's a poem that is basically the man who thinks he can, right? It is about sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. And it can be man or woman, it doesn't matter. It's just
Mhm.
that confidence. As a former softball player, tennis player, I was a professional baseball player. You can't go to bat with a mindset, I've already lost. You
Mhm.
can't step foot on the field thinking, oh, that team's better than we are, or that guy is better than I
Exactly.
am. You have to
Yep.
go out there with that confidence, knowing I've put in all the work that I could, whether it be on the field at practice, whether it be in the weight room or at the dinner table, right?
Yes.
I've
Yes.
put in all the work. I'm confident I can go out there and know that I'm going to perform to the best of my ability.
Yes. And that kind of made me think of one of the things I also love to do is using practices and seasons as a way or as a time to really hone in on that fueling strategy. So
Mhm.
that way, when you get into game day, you're not trying something new. You're not worrying about, if something's going to sit well or you're going to end up with a sloshy belly running around. So you're taking that factor out of anything. So you can just focus on your game. You have the right fuel so you can have that mental clarity, that focus, that concentration, and it all translates into real life even beyond the sport, and that for me is what I get most excited about
Yeah.
because you hear all these parents that see these changes in their kid and how they're showing up in the world, which that's kind of sappy, I know, but it all
No,
matters.
it really does. And that brings us to probably when it comes to the blocking and tackling, the meal, right? At some point, it all comes down to meal prep, meal planning.
Mhm.
Um, and so the challenge is, and some parents may hear this and feel convicted or guilty. I'm like, you probably do because we don't know. I don't know how many calories my kid needs to achieve his goals.
Mhm.
I don't know like what macros and all this. I don't know that. And so it's
Mhm.
not that we're convicted or guilty. That's the whole point of this conversation. Like, let's just know. And then
Mhm.
let's help our kids be more successful.
Yeah.
And so your process when you're beginning with the meal plan and you talk about like an intake form, right? Um, how do you determine what the needs are for a kid to achieve their goal? Is this just math, a formula, you're a dietitian, dietetics, this is what you do, right? So this is probably your secret sauce. Uh, how does that process works?
There's a few different variables. So of course we're going to look at, the general things, their height, their weight, their age, also their activity level. So whether they're one of those athletes that, you work out or you train or you practice 3 days a week, or you're doing 2 days for 5 days a week, or you're going every single day. So we're really looking, and it's not a perfect science. We can't
Hmm.
say exactly how many calories this kid is going to burn versus the other. Genetics definitely play a role. But we can use a little bit of math in that sense in looking at what their goals are to shift what those macros are going to be. But that's something that is very individualized. It goes off of, once again, that conversation of what they're doing. And then we kind of give them, we like them to come away with an idea of how many calories to aim for, how many carbs, how much protein, how much fats in grams.
Hmm.
But this is just like a perfect world scenario type thing. It's an estimate, but the goal isn't to be perfect. It's just to make gradual steps towards that.
Right.
Uh, but it looks very different for everyone. So I wish I could say, it's 20% of this, 20% of that, this many calories, but it varies greatly.
Yeah, for me, it's probably 20% less of everything. So that's about it.
No,
Um,
you look fit. You look good.
yeah, we will. It's not about me. It's not about me. Um, but one thing, just clarity. I hear the term macros all the time, right?
Mhm,
Can you explain what are macros, why are
mhm.
they, and why they're important? And then when you talk about translating that to meals, like how do we know we're getting the right macros and all that stuff? Can you educate me on what the heck a macro is?
So macro is just a short way of saying macronutrients. Macronutrients are going to be the nutrients that provide your body with energy. Energy is essentially often what we look at or quantify as calories. So the three main nutrients that provide you, or three main macronutrients that provide you with calories, are going to be carbohydrates, which provide you with 4 calories per gram, protein, which provides you with 4 calories per gram, and then fats, which provide you with 9 calories per gram. So those tend to be just higher in calories. So
Right.
high fat foods, a little more higher in calories, but creating like the breakdown of these things and using them, they all have a different purpose. So, like with your carbohydrates, I kind of use the word carb slash sugar interchangeably
Hmm.
because your body is converting both of them to glucose,
Hmm.
which is that immediate energy. It's
Hmm.
our preferred energy in our bodies. So, for athletes, making sure that you're getting sufficient carbohydrates right
Hmm.
before training, right before practice, it's
Hmm.
essential. They have a higher carbohydrate need than the general population who's sedentary. So I'd say for athletes, that's a really big one of incorporating and working that in.
And
And
just really quickly, Marissa, so I remember this from school as we were talking about. So you have your simple carbohydrate, right? And then you have
Mhm.
your complex carbohydrate.
Correct.
Not all, they're not equal. Well, I guess maybe calorically they're equal, but their impact on your body is not necessarily equal. Can you explain the difference between those?
Yes, so the complex carbohydrates are going to be things like brown rice, whole grains, whole wheat. They're going to be carbohydrates that have some additional nutrients in them, as well as some fiber. So with these carbohydrates, you usually want to have them like a little bit, like an hour or a little bit more than that, like 1 to 2 hours before playing,
Hmm.
because they're going to stay in your system a little longer, give you more of a steady burning fuel.
Hmm.
Whereas your simple carbohydrates is really that quick burning fuel.
Hmm.
So with athletes, the simplest way I like to explain it, usually it's like something you want to have an hour or less before training, and it's your last opportunity to top off that energy tank in your
Yeah.
body. So it's going to be I like to explain it as like reaching for like baby food. What would a baby have? Whether it's applesauce, dry cereal, some goldfish, just something that is very simple carbs, going to give you that immediate fuel. You're going to burn it off in that activity that
Mhm.
you're doing.
Yeah. So it's very much not a energy drink or gummy worms or things of that nature, right?
Yeah, I could go on and on. It's, there's room for those things in the
Sure.
diet. Of course, we don't want to load up our diet with those things, but
Sure.
every once in a while. But yes, when it's around your sport, it's not ideal. Especially like energy drinks these days, they have so many different chemicals in them and all these things, and
Right.
our body,
They're
especially
being
Gen
marketed to kids, really. Um,
100%.
I remember, I mean, so my daughter played soccer, and I remember there was she was 6 or something like that, soccer. So you're already moving. It's a lot of
Yeah,
activity. Your blood is flowing, anything like that. And there's a little girl that her mom would give her like a 16-ounce Red Bull during the soccer game. And then
6 years old.
she was 6, yeah. And she would always have these headaches and things like that. And I'm thinking, ma'am, that is not
No
good
judgment.
for her.
But it's so sad because, like you said, they make all of these things so brightly colored. They make all these cartoons on these things, so kids are naturally drawn to them. They have people and scientists who are paid to find that sweet spot in food that makes it addictive and makes it more vibrant and, these different colorings that are illegal in other countries. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of things working against us here in America with, a lot of the options we have. They're marketed as being healthy. They pick
right.
the one buzzword that they know will draw someone in, whether it's gluten-free or, fat-free or sugar-free. They choose one of the terms and they
Mhm.
plaster it on there. But,
Organic,
if
right?
yes, if you don't know how to read a label and, there's so many foods out there with ingredients I don't even know what they are. They come out with new ones all
That's
the time. I'm
scary.
like,
That's
I don't
scary.
know what that is. So, yeah,
Yeah,
education is key. Kids, they have plenty of energy.
yeah.
If they have the right fuel, the right, you're also keeping them hydrated with electrolytes. They shouldn't need those things, especially not at 6 years old.
Oh yeah, that's an extreme example, but
Yes.
it is still, and myself nonetheless, right? I
Yep.
go to 7-Eleven or HEB or some store and you're dragging for whatever reason because you probably stayed up too late. So
Yep.
my bad, right off the bat. And then you got to get up early, you hit the gym and you go to work, and then you got baseball practice in the evening. And
Yep.
then you're dragging butt and you see a nice sugar-free monster. And then, you know what? I need a sugar-free monster to get me through
Yep.
practice.
Yep.
The
And then
cycle,
your body becomes addicted to it. It becomes
right?
reliant. It knows that time of day. It sends those signals. It's a very vicious cycle, and I've fallen into it too. I will never say
Sure,
I'm not a perfect person.
sure.
It's challenging, but it's,
Uh,
equipping yourself with the knowledge and making slightly better decisions each day is going to lead
right.
to the best outcome.
Yeah, again, I use myself as an example because this is where I fail, if any place is here. I try to be better. So we're
Exactly.
having this conversation. But as a parent, this is where you have some responsibility, right? As a parent, your child is under your care. You have the ability to say yes to some things, and you have the ability to say no to some things. I don't know too many, or the kids that I know I coach 12-year-olds and then my son is, 15. They're not cooking. They they don't have any money to go out
Yeah.
and do this stuff.
Yep.
So as a parent, that's your responsibility, right? And
Yep.
then you have limited time. As we were mentioning, we're all over the place. We don't know what to make. We can't read labels not because we're illiterate, because the labels are written in Greek and right, and they purposefully make it difficult for
Yep.
us to make these decisions. And
Mhm.
so, when it goes about meal planning and meal prepping, when you're
Mhm.
talking to parents, like how do you go about helping them identify ways to, just get better meals in front of the kid? And as a byproduct, the family, everybody benefits, right? So,
Yeah.
like, where do you typically start with a parent when talking about meal prep and meal planning?
Yeah, so once again, it's figuring out what you're currently doing. Because it's hard to overhaul. So I'll have some parents come and, they already have this process that they're putting in place, and then we can easily incorporate, some healthier options in there, or some, whether it's just getting a more bigger variety of animal proteins, have some healthy carbohydrates, whether it's potatoes, rice, something that maybe the parents will need less of, but the athletes will need more of. Um, but I like to work on like kind of like starting out with snacks, building out what I call a snack roster. So something that, because like you said, the parents are the ones doing the grocery shopping. Oftentimes you need things that are grab and go
Yeah.
easy. So figuring out, kind of sitting down, writing out maybe like 5 to 10 things that you want to keep in the house. So that way, you're going to reach for that and you're not going to go to a vending machine at school. So having a game plan, figuring out what's going to work for you, what your family likes to eat, maybe having just a good staple, like if you're really wanting to do that meal prepping, having a good staple rotation, like each week we're gonna have one source of chicken, we're gonna have one source of beef, and then finding new fun ways to create that. And it could be super fancy things. You go on Pinterest, you find some recipes. We have some recipes, or it could just be keeping a very simple, like a one pan meal, doing a crock pot, just something that, for a lot of parents, I hear it's like we get home, we're tired, so we just swing by and get fast food.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a very common one. And it happens. You're often on the road with tournaments. We have fast food guides for that reason, because there are better choices to get there. It's not going to be realistic to say it doesn't happen. And it should happen. It's a part of life.
Mhm.
Learning how to make those better decisions, having a game plan ahead of time. So if there is that tired evening and you're about to go get, something that maybe, you shouldn't have, or it's not going to serve you next day for game day, then having your fridge stocked is going to be beneficial, or
Yeah.
having those go-to snacks that you can keep in your bag for an emergency, or just figuring out what plan is going to work well for you and your family, which once again, it looks very different for everyone.
Right. Yeah, something where fast food is just going to happen. It is because it just has to
The
at
nature of it. Yep.
and one of the things my wife discovered, because I'm not into this type of stuff, is that Chipotle, you can do like a bulk order of Chipotle.
Mhm,
And so
mhm,
we tried this, and it was actually a great idea because you're working parents plus football games plus
mhm.
practices plus tournaments.
Yep.
My son is at one tournament, and I have to go coach a different
Yep.
tournament. And so we'll just do a bulk order of Chipotle of like chicken, rice, and beans, and then you'll have your tortilla or whatever.
Mhm.
And as it's time, you're coming home, bam, you can just load up your plate and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's
Um,
smart. I used to work at Chipotle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in school. So Chipotle's a
How
great
many
one.
discount codes or anything do you?
Shoot, I wish. Well, I worked there, I did. And of course, I didn't ever want to eat it because I worked there. But now,
Yeah.
also
So
ways back. But yeah, no,
there
having
are
those
hacks like
strategies.
that that you can do to
Mhm.
maybe maybe you don't go to McDonald's and get the 40 nuggets for $10, right? Maybe you
The
just choose
nuggets,
something different.
unknown nuggets, what's in them. Yeah. No, having just like with sports, just general playing like sports and things like that, having a game plan is what's going to set you up for success in the future. So
Mhm.
having that time where you sit down, you figure out, if I do XYZ, this is going to help do this, this, and this. So
Mhm.
it's not allowing like circumstances to throw you, because I mean life is always going to be ebbing and flowing, but it's learning from, okay, we ended up, we went to school this day and he didn't have any food with him. The school lunch was so little fuel that he was starving all day. Okay, well, this weekend we're going to go shopping and we're going to get this, this, this. So yeah, just being prepared is the most important thing you can do. And then having like those backups, knowing like, okay, on these busy nights, Chipotle's it. Stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I did a video that I just released with Ryan Ford of Texas Baseball Resource. And one of the things that he said, and I've been using this language the last couple of days because I thought it was so good, is that the athlete you have to get to a point where the athlete owns their own development.
Hmm.
They have to own it,
Hmm.
meaning that, let's say if their goal is to go to LSU or UT or Vanderbilt or whatever one of these Power Five conference schools,
Hmm.
they need to understand what the requirement is to even have a chance at that. And then they have to own the process to get there.
Yeah.
Parent, coaches, whatever, we are part of that plan. But if the athletes themselves are not willing to do the things necessary to reach that goal, then the goal is not going to happen. It's not going to happen by hope, right? It's like you
100%.
need a plan to get there. The same with nutrition, right?
Hmm.
Is that the goal? It'll be great if the parent, we are a part of that process because we have the money, we have the means and the
Hmm.
knowledge to cook and things of that nature. But the athletes, if they're oh, I don't want to eat lettuce, then hey, that's just part of the job, right? You have to go to
Hmm.
sleep because you need rest.
Yep.
And that's just part of your job. I mean, you
Yep.
don't fight me on this because you're the one that wants to be a professional, whatever, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
speaking of sleep, where does sleep fall into all of this? I had one of my coaches, Brandon, asked about proper sleep, which I thought was great. And then how does that determine like your caloric need, right? Because I have my little Garmin watch and it'll say something like your resting heart rate and your resting calorie burn versus your active calorie burn. So I'm just
Hmm.
curious what part rest plays into all of this.
Rest is everything, especially like with athletes all the time. They're growing, they're building, whether it's your muscle repairing itself and building stronger, whether it's, your mind. That's where there's a lot of healing that goes on. There's cytokines that are released, which is a protein that is essentially going to help clear out a lot of waste in the brain. There's your immune system that's going to be rebuilding itself, and just a lot of different processes happen. And I know that the trend these days with these kids on their phones and their iPads, not falling asleep till late and then getting up early for school, um, it's very common, but sleep is essential. There's a lot of different things that happen when you're running low on sleep, whether it's, you're not going to be seeing those muscle gains that you're aiming for. You're probably going to end up, a lot of people end up more hungry, but they end up hungry for the wrong things. So if you're not getting enough sleep, there's the stress hormone cortisol, it becomes elevated. So oftentimes your body wants that quick, immediate fuel. So often you're craving all these sugary things that might give you that immediate energy boost. So the blood sugars are going to bump up, but they're going to crash, and then you're going to feel like poop. So
And you need energy drinks and everything else.
yes,
It's like,
so there's just so many different things, and younger kids, because they're also growing their human selves, they have additional rest and recovery needs. So it could be anywhere, and it depends on the kid. It depends on how active they are, but it could be anywhere from, like, 8 to 10 year olds needing 10 to 11 hours to then teenagers maybe 7 to 9. And I'm not a sleep expert. I just know that that's typically what a lot of them end up needing, and it is all the more essential during those developmental years.
yeah, that is so key. It's so key. There are times where I myself, I'm older. I'm not, as active anymore. I feel like, okay, I can get by with not enough sleep. But then my son sleeps till noon. And part of me is like, boy, you need to get up and get after it. But then I remember, like, man, he's grown into a dude and like he may
It's,
need a little,
it's
more wake
hard.
up here.
But sometimes what I'll say with that is, they also have to go to bed a little earlier
Oh
because we
yeah.
still have to be a functioning human the next day.
Yeah. And I'm thinking like as I was talking about my Garmin watch, I almost feel like, hey, I'm gonna slap a watch on you and that way I can monitor your sleep. I know if
You
you're getting
could.
enough rest or not. I think my
Hmm.
wife might approve that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we've got a lot of resources these days that you and I didn't have growing up, which is huge. So just
I had a
knowing what to do with that info. Sometimes it's just too much information, but
The resources my mom had was a belt. It's like you go to sleep or else, right?
Yeah, sounds about right.
But that does bring up something that's pretty important, the idea of accountability. In that, uh, as a parent, we talked about this, the athlete needs to own that, but a parent, you have a part to play. But and you've talked about it as well through your app, through the app of the Pernetti Sports Performance and Nutrition. You guys help to track this, right? You can help with the intake. You can help with the planning. You don't do it all, but you have a week, not a monthly call, like with parents, just to and athlete, right, to make
Mhm.
sure that they stay accountable.
Yeah, accountability goes a long way because I mean, it's just like any other area of your life where we could all use external accountability. So someone to report to other than yourself that's going to help you stay the course when, we get veered off track naturally. So, I mean, parents definitely play a big role in that, but I know kids, you can only hear so much from your parents. So having, someone outside of that, just like how at school they'll have their teachers or they'll have their coach with their whatever their sport team is, we like to come in with the app helps because it has those check-ins. So we get onto our kids sometimes to, just give us at least a few days a week because that's going to allow us to best customize your program to your needs, which is going to ultimately allow you to achieve that goal
Mhm.
and speed up that process even if we have more insight, more data, more understanding of how you're feeling, how you're doing, and what improvements we can help you make.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Marissa, this has been such a good conversation, and I feel that there's almost a need for, I would say, even like a workshop, like
You know, I've
the,
I've
the
thought about it. I have not built one out, but if you have ideas or if parents, if they have comments of what they feel they need to be successful and helping their kids out, I'm all ears because I think the more resources and the more simplified and structured that we could provide, the more kids we can reach and the more families we can help.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll put our brains together. We'll figure something out, and it's just a way to it's information. It starts there. When you have the information, then you have the ability to make real and meaningful change in the lives of these kids. And these are our most precious resources. I mean, as a parent, that is like your most loved thing is your child. So why not, um, don't deny them this, right? Like it's okay if they don't get the new iPhone or whatever. Like that's only going to last for a little while, but their own health is that's literally their entire life, right?
Yeah,
So if you can make a small investment in the time and energy now, it's going to pay dividends like untold. Yeah, it could be, oh, I avoided a illness or a cancer or injury later in life because I took care of myself with proper nutrition, rest, um, stayed in the gym and stayed active, and you name it. So that's good.
absolutely.
I asked this question of folks before we break. If you were to, talk to, let's say, a younger Marissa, young softball Marissa, right? You had dreams of playing in college or whatever, looking back, hindsight is 2020. What would you tell young Marissa about nutrition and how to think about nutrition in relation to her performance?
Oh, there'd be a lot of things. I so wish I could go back in time with that knowledge. And I can only imagine because I was, just going off of a lot of I guess just kind of natural God-given talent in some respects. And then what I was taught in school and with travel ball, but that nutrition, I mean, I think it would have added years to my career in sports.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it would have also given me a lot more confidence. Um, because I think like with what I was going through, I was so tired all the time and I kept thinking what's wrong with me. And that translated into my school and just a lot of different areas. So I think it would just I mean, I guess is this assuming I have the knowledge that I have now?
Is Back to the Future, right? We
Uh-huh.
the DeLorean and we can go back and change, the life
Uh-huh.
of Marissa. So I think that the confidence I heard would have been huge
Hmm.
for you, and the fatigue, right?
Yep.
And just the improvements in performance would have
Hmm.
been huge for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think a lot of things and getting more whole foods and I think that pre and post workout nutrition would have would have made a huge difference
yeah,
in how I showed up in my sport and how long I got to play.
yeah.
So a lot of changes all in hindsight, but that ultimately led me here. And
Yep.
I don't think I'd have this passion. I don't think I'd be here if I didn't have those experiences. So
There you go. And then you have the opportunity to change the lives of so many more people out there because you can share your experience and your passion with others, which is
yeah.
great. Awesome. So again, Marissa, this has been absolutely fantastic. One that I will personally re-listen to probably multiple times so I understand macros and then start studying this stuff and understanding, what I need to do as a parent to get better. But as well, I know that I mentioned on the previous episode with Jimbo that um, you guys are one of the first partners of this channel, if you will. And I reached out to Jimbo because I really liked what you were doing and I believe in it as well. So I'm going to have links and I think I can put it in the video or description and all this other stuff because I think it'll be very helpful for people to just go to the site, look at the app, just do a consultation, set an appointment to have that initial conversation and learn what it is that you can do as a parent to help the performance of your kid. And then, what happens from there happens. But I'm going to at least, provide a mechanism for people to reach out to you guys because I believe in what you're doing. I really, really believe in the nutrition stuff because it's personal to me. For me personally, even for my kid and my wife and my family, I think there's a benefit to the ideas that we talk about here. So I'm going to add that to the description and all the stuff.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, Marissa, you have a fantastic rest of the week, and I can't wait to, we'll talk about doing maybe a web conference or something like that for
Yeah.
folks. They can learn more about this topic.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I appreciate, the opportunity to be able to reach some of your audience and hopefully inspire others with some of the information to start making some small changes.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk again soon.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye.